And now it's time for Fabulous Film and Friends. On this 85th episode of Fabulous Film and Friends, we are going to connect the dots between three seminal cautionary tales from the 80s. 1984's Repo Man, directed by Alex Cox, and starring Emelio Estevez, Harry Dean Stanton, Olivia Barash, Jennifer Balgobin, Dick Rude, Tracey Walter, Cy Richardson, Vonetta McGee, Richard Foronjy, Tom Finnegan, Eddie Velez, Del Zamora, Zander Schloss, Fox Harris, and Jimmy Buffett. Then 1987's River's Edge, directed by Tim Hunter, starring Keanu Reeves, Crispin Clover, Ione Skye, Daniel Roebuck, Joshua John Miller, Josh Richman, Roxana Zal, Jim Metzler, Tom Bauer, and Dennis Hopper. Then topped off with Robocop, also from 1987, and starring Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, Kurtwood Smith, Miguel Ferrer, Paul McCrane, Ray Wise, Jesse D. Goins, Felton Perry, Del Zamora, Dan O'Herlihy, and the inimitable Ronny Cox. I'm Gino Caputi, and returning to the program to break down all this cynicism and disaffected young adulthood are my sister Roseanne, the lit major, Joe Field, the author hypnotist, and back again after a long fitful stint in suspended animation, the photobug and funny man, Gordon Alex Robertson.
Thank you.
Alex, warm us up with the inspirational words of Dick Jones to an upstart Bob Morton.
Oh, God. Well, you threw me off on that one. I was hoping for Tracey Walters, but no, you got to give me... everyone's
all right,
talking about...
do your Tracey Walter. Fine.
Yeah, I'm going to be difficult, okay? I've been working on this all week. So everybody's talking about weirdness nowadays. Nobody understands that in the beginning it was just Star Trek. That's all it was. And then came the movies. So what do you think these movies are all about? That's right, they're all Star Trek. Whether it's Showgirls or Frozen or Happy Feet, it all goes back to Star Trek. See? That's why you don't drive.
I thought I told you imitate Tracey Walter, not me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, straight from the brain of Gino Caputi.
Straight from brain. Yeah. I wanted to tie it in. I wanted to have a nice little tie-in. Miller and
tied in
Caputi.
You did. Tied it in. You did.
The Miller Caputi show.
Okay, before we suit up and start taking names, the synopses. In Repo Man, Otto, an LA punk, gets fired from his job as a grocery clerk, but finds his true calling when a tough-talking stranger named Bud convinces Otto to join his team of auto repossession agents. Bud, Otto, and the entire network of the Repo Men run into an existential crisis when a mysterious car that has a reward of $20,000 is believed to have an alien in its trunk. River's Edge is loosely based on true events and catalogs a turmoil of emotions, or lack thereof, that a group of teens encounter when they discover one of their friends, John, aka Samson, has murdered his girlfriend while another friend, Lane, swears them all to secrecy. Robocop looks into the future where the Detroit police are privately owned by a corporation called Omni Consumer Products. After Alex Murphy, a brave but naive officer, is killed in the line of duty by a ruthless crime lord named Clarence Boddicker, Murphy's body is given to OCP for a pilot program that transforms Murphy into a cyborg called Robocop. The program seems to work, and Robocop starts cleaning the streets until he realizes that all is not right in his programming, and there are sinister forces at play that led to his creation, including a pact between OCP Vice President Dick Jones and Boddicker's gang. All right, Joe, I'm going to pick on you once again because you have the fresh spirit and eyes of youth. So, which films do you rank the films? And first of all, had you seen any of these films before?
I had not.
So how do you rank them?
Up at the very top, I'm going to put RoboCop.
Ooh.
Right after that, I would say River's Edge. And last, Repo Man.
Interesting. Roseanne, you're smiling. Go for it.
Well, again, I love all these movies, but the person here talking today would say Repo Man first, River's Edge, then RoboCop.
Alex Robertson, what do you got?
Same thing. Repo Man, River's Edge, RoboCop. And they're close. They're
Yes,
close.
absolutely.
But that's the order that I have.
So it's 3 against 1, Joe. That's exactly how I rank them too.
Perfect. Okay.
We win.
You lose, millennial. It's interesting though that we like River's Edge squarely second all across the board. I wonder why that is, because that's a really good movie. But anyway, let's tear into it. Roseanne Caputi, what are these films? Why? Okay, I had this vision of these 3 films as like part of this trio of 80s movies, and I wasn't quite sure they worked together. And we watched them, and lo and behold, they work. Ooh. So why do they work? Pass the laughing gas. What do we got?
I think they work because it is, again, I don't think there's so much cautionary tales. It only seems that way today. But I'm like, I think they are squarely in no, we are losing our humanity. This isn't the future. This is what's happening now. And I think we have 3 villains who are all sort of similar. They're all sort of trying to hold on to something. And we have 3, I don't even know if you could call them heroes, but people who are struggling to find their humanity. Or struggling to find some meaning in all of this. And I think Robocop, it's really explicit. He's a cyborg and a robot, with shreds of finding out who he is. But I don't think Otto or poor Keanu Reeves are very far behind in terms of being isolated from themselves. And so I just think all of these films, I think, are trying to show us that this also, I mean, it's against what happened with the 60s counterculture and what a huge, hilarious failure it all was. And these films, I think, all really show that and portray that. And it's almost this like post-feminism, post-masculinity kind of world, and where there are no adults anymore. And so how they try to find their way in each film is sort of a variation on a theme.
Well, the adults are freaking trying to kill you too.
Well, the adult through either neglect or abject assassination.
Joe, what do you think? You agree with that assessment? You don't find them a cautionary? Do you find them a cautionary tale, or were they? Well, of course, you weren't there in the 80s. I thought they were cautionary tale, but how did you see those films? Do they relate?
I can see them as being all cautionary tales somewhat. I think that in some it's a little more obvious than others. I mean, I think Robocop is 100% supposed to be sort of a dystopian, like, cautionary tale. I mean, all the different commercials that they have throughout the whole movie just kind of, I think, illustrates that point. But yeah, I mean, I think that I mostly agree. I think that, again, that theme is a little bit less obvious to me, maybe, in Repo Man than in the other 2, where River's Edge, it's at least like, okay, yeah, these are teens who aren't even sure how they should feel about something that's absolutely horrible and tragic that's happened to them, and also kind of are in a society that's failed them pretty much. So
I think in Repo Man, I just think about almost the consumerism of televangelism, which you missed, Joe, in the 80s, I think,
Yeah.
and how big that was. And I forgot about it, too, until I saw Repo Man. But also, they're just like food, beer, this almost like everything is this consumer. Generic.
But that was
all
real,
consuming.
But remember, that was
thing.
an actual thing in the 80s.
Late 70s,
Yeah.
early 80s. I mean,
Yeah.
everywhere
Yeah.
Beer.
I mean, they were making fun of it with food, because you never saw food, but
beer.
but there were plenty of generic brands just stocking the shelves. What was that about anyway, Alex?
I have no idea. I think it was just a way to save a little money.
Yeah.
I really don't know, because with us it was beer. It was beer. It was just the novelty of drinking beer. And then we discovered that it was brewed by Lucky, which no longer is there, in Vancouver, Washington, right across the border from Portland. But something about the idea, I don't know what it was, that you're drinking beer out of a white can with black labeling,
But does it seem like post-consumerist too? Like, to me, it seems
I think
like
maybe there was. We didn't think in terms of dystopian.
Who thought about when you're drinking that delicious root beer or cola?
Sure.
Cola.
After about 5 of those, you didn't care. Hey, it would come in handy around some kind of a car service you could call, and they'll drive you wherever you want to go.
All right, Alex.
But that never happened. Anyway, sorry.
Six packs.
You old lush. What do you think? Were these cautionary tales, or were they of their time?
The first two, on the list, I think Repo Man and River's Edge, really captured the zeitgeist of their time. I always thought that, and there are elements, I think in Repo Man there's sort of that underlying fear of nuclear annihilation.
Definitely.
With the MacGuffin in the trunk, because he took that directly from the old noir movie Kiss Me Deadly. One of the first Mickey Spillane or Mike Hammer from the 50s, and they're chasing after this mysterious box, which is a box of plutonium. And at the end of the movie, this one woman, out of greed, opens it up, literally the Pandora's box, and the world around them just goes up in smoke. So, and apparently that was one of Alex Cox's first ideas. He wanted to have where somebody, whether it was Otto or somebody else, opens the trunk and the world gets obliterated. But I think I think Repo Man and River's Edge do a great job capturing the zeitgeist of the time, but Robocop was definitely, looking with one eye toward the future, a cautionary tale.
Don't you think, and this goes for all of you, don't you think all 3 films to me are saying you ain't seen nothing yet?
It's possible.
And,
I don't know.
mean, at least, in terms of where we are now, in terms of disaffected youth and the consumerism.
No, I think that's how we feel. I think what they're saying, I think they are amazed by what's happening in disaffected youth and consumerism.
Yeah,
I feel like they think this is a pinnacle of like, what the hell is this? And so they're trying to throw things out there. Like I love River's Edge and the teacher talking about, sorry, women, now you have to get jobs. And then Ione Skye and her friend like laughing about rape, and just how did we get here? I really feel like watching them now, they seem more cautionary, but at the time, I really do feel like it's more like existential, trying to deal with it as it's happening then. Yeah, and I feel that way about Robocop too, because I just think that video game Nukem and
but
their stupid ass TV shows.
But more to the point, it's the privatization of public services like the police, which is a huge discussion now.
Nowadays,
the kind of thing.
But it was happening then. I don't think it was a guess. It was happening.
What is like Halliburton and what's the other one? Blackhawk or no?
Yeah. No, it's
that great line that Ronny Cox has. We are the military. I mean,
sure.
It's chilling now. We laughed then. But it's sort of like, oh boy, if only you knew.
Well, maybe know. You laughed because you were a little bit, I might add, older. I was lost on me. Now you look at it and go, boy, they really were just prophesying what was to come. So that's how I see it. So that's where I think it really, not that they wanted to be cautionary tales. They were satires. Okay, River's Edge was definitely not a satire.
No,
but there's satirical moments in River's Edge for sure.
Certainly.
I'd say Crispin Clover definitely skirts that line in his performance.
I would say it's satire of a teenager. Like he's almost like a 50s teenager compared to all these like dead-eyed weirdos,
He is, but he's still. I noticed watching it again today. A lot of that. A lot of the overtop Gloverisms. And as Gino said, before Harrison Ford, there was
Deadly
Crispin
with that
Glover.
finger.
You do all that pointy acting. But I thought, it was effective. And that moment when they finally see the body and he's like, oh, this is totally bogus. And he pokes it with a stick, and just to see that change come over his face, it's very chilling, like, oh, John, you could fry for this. And it wasn't, funny, but in a very uncomfortable way.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's enough of a contrast with everybody else who is incredibly like deadpan and
But it's
strange.
also the way they talk about him. Like the girls say, "Why does he think he's running everything? He thinks he's They really laugh behind his back.
Yeah.
But they're not strong enough to tell him, and that's always kind of interesting. That he still is their gang leader.
Yeah, they're not even strong enough to, with the exception of Keanu Reeves, report the body.
Right.
And he won't even admit to it. But I do think that the idea that, they'll follow anyone because they don't have a better idea between any of them.
Yeah.
And so he is sort of their de facto leader, and he's this completely annoying fool. But he's the only one with any ideas or drive.
No, and you wonder, like with Keanu Reeves, are all three kids from different fathers? We don't know. She just, and the guy she's shacking up with now, good old Leo Rossi, has no investment in these kids. It's just a house to sleep in.
Sure.
Really.
Well,
all you want to do is eat my food and fuck my mother.
Pretty much.
Motherfucker food eater. A great line.
So where does Repo Man fit in? I think it fits in with his dumb friend who's like, oh, it's the system, and he says that's bullshit, man. You're a white suburban punk like me. So I thought I guess that's where the films to me tie together.
To me, Otto is looking for. He's attracted to this code. Harry Dean Stanton has the Repo Man code. He doesn't have those with the punk kids, and he is attracted to it. And I do feel like Keanu Reeves is similar. I feel like those guys and their sort of weird association with Feck, and I do think Peter Weller also sort of this idea of he's pulled to this almost like medieval idea of what a cop is, despite his programming, which is essentially evil.
Well, let's define the three code. Let's define the Repo Man code and the Robocop code, the Robocop code, and the Psycho Killer code. I mean, all three movies have a code you need to follow to.
Code, yeah.
They do.
So what are the codes? What's the Repo Man code, Alex Robertson?
Well, I don't know everything. The first is I shall not commit harm to any vehicle therein. even though they break that on a regular basis.
I don't feel like they like it.
I don't think they like it. I think that it's great to have something you can attach your hat to, I guess. But
Well, Emelio Estevez follows. He's attracted to a code. River's Edge sort of flips the switch because it's the serial killer, or the sort of like
he's not a serial
amoral, just sort of doofus looking for meaning. And then, of course, you've got RoboCop's prime directives. So that's how I tie them. But the only one who doesn't sort of share, the protagonist doesn't share in the River's Edge code. He's still aimless.
Okay, if we're talking about the River's Edge code, I think it's Dennis Hopper acting like, well, if you do things out of love, then they're okay.
Right.
And I do feel like Keanu Reeves is the only person who has any kind of love in his. Like, he does seem to really care about Ione Skye. She doesn't care about him.
Well, he also cares about his sister. He also cares about his sister.
He cares about both his siblings. He's the only one who actually exhibits any kindness or anything like love. He's the closest to Dennis Hopper that there is.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
I hadn't thought of that, actually. I thought he was sort of out wandering on his own while Dennis Hopper is trying to give that, John or Samson the sort of ideal of what he needs. I may be an SOB, but at least I have love in my heart and I have passion. Right. You guys are faking it because you have no idea what you're doing. And then, of course, murders him. Spoiler: he murders him for just that lack of a code. Anyway, Joe, you seem to be contemplating all this. What do you think?
No, I was also thinking that there is, I think, another code in River's Edge, which is like the code of you stick by your friends.
Oh yeah,
like,
of course.
You're supposed to kind of cover. I mean, that was the expectation that Lane had, right? It was like,
right.
We can't, like, she's already dead. We can't do anything about that. So like, we got to stick with each other. Like, nobody's going to narc on anybody else. Because 2 dead friends is worse than 1, even if one of them killed the other. Which, that may be a messed up code, but but it is
and
a
they
code.
don't really adhere to that one either.
No.
Right. It's a failure there
they're
as
just
well.
not capable.
Yeah. I think they are trying to set down codes and no one's in, which I think is one of the best parts about River's Edge, except for, again, I think Keanu Reeves almost default humanity and searching for love.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'd agree with
the
that.
friend thing doesn't work.
Is there a underlying message that's different in each? What do you think's what's different about RoboCop than say, obviously the sci-fi trappings make it different? Or what are the
Definitely
compare and
anything
contrast?
it's more corporate.
Compare and contrast. I guess it's the corporations that makes it a little different, but it's still part of the consumerism
It is
that the 80s was kind of known for. But I always thought the 80s don't you think the 80s got a bad rap? Sorry, Joe, to exclude you on this one, but I always thought the 80s got a bad rap compared to the 90s, and then of course where we are now.
Well, the 80s is just so obvious about it, and so it's something easy to point to, but it's also like acting like the only way people in the 80s dressed was like Madonna, you know?
Yeah.
It's just one of those sort of obvious trappings of the 80s, whereas I think RoboCop looks at it, you know, Ronny Cox is representing, he's like Dick Cheney in that movie, speaking of how, you know, Halliburton and things like that. And, you know, that's already establishment. So I do think the idea of corporations isolating us from our humanity is a little bit more obvious, but with the dystopic science fiction, they make it less on the nose. And I do feel like that's at work in Repo Man, and then de facto River's Edge, just because, again, they're all so obsessed with television, which is, of course, the ultimate corporate tool, you know, and I think each film shows that.
All 3 movies have that sort of...
Absolutely.
So you see the TV sort of numbing everybody in each movie.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yep. I guess that's, I suppose, like how in the mid 2000s, everybody started dealing with zombies in the end of the world.
Sure.
So it's a thing in the 80s. So these films are just, they're of their time, but they're giving us a pretty dire warning as to where we're going.
They're more, I would say each of these films in its own way is more edgy. You think about 1984. 1984 is Karate Kid and Beverly Hills Cop and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so these films, even RoboCop, I mean, they were all hits or no? I don't know. River's Edge now, right?
River's Edge was not a hit.
I don't know.
I think it was... Repo Man was
Man
it was made for so little that it became a hit.
Yeah. Well, I think the initial release, it didn't do anything. And then, I remember... It was one of the first of its kind, I think, when they decided to make it more of a concerted effort. It was one of the first movies that was released both in the theater and on VHS the same day. And that was a big deal back then. Yeah. But I do remember, I know in Seattle, it was playing at one of the art houses, and it just played nonstop. I mean, it broke all the records. So months go by, and it's still Repo Man, Repo Man, Repo Man.
You think it's thanks to Iggy Pop and Circle Jerks?
Well, the soundtrack.
What about Jimmy Buffett?
Yeah, Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah, Jimmy Buffett.
It's really more like a spiritual calling. You read this book,
there's also a Star Trek connection to Repo Man. Angelique Pettyjohn, who played the drill thrall.
That's right.
In suddenly the name of the episode is escaping me.
One of the Repo wives.
She's a Repo wife. And,
wow.
So it's
yes. And why don't you say what happened after that?
What do you mean, Mace?
What do you mean? I'm not going to say because I don't know anything about those things.
After Star Trek, Miss Pettyjohn sort of had a little foray in softcore and hardcore. But Alex Cox, God love him, he's egalitarian if nothing else, and he brought her back in. Well, we haven't gotten to cast yet, but
not yet. But
yeah.
Anyway,
so I think something we've been getting short doing. I just wanted to focus on director's vision because we haven't been focusing on that for a while. Not since our Coppola Scorsese duels. Just seems like three are very visionary directors. Even Tim Hunter, who I was looking at his resume, he ended up doing Breaking Bad and TV and stuff, and it's like he really.
But his
really
early attempts were great.
Vision.
He had something.
Strong vision. He has
Disaffected Youth. He was cornering the market on that, starting with Over the Edge in 1979.
Yeah, I didn't see that, of course.
I didn't see that.
And I didn't see good old Tex.
And Tex.
Yeah.
But there you go. You've got the Matt Dillon connection, because Matt Dillon's...
And the Emelio Estevez connection.
And Emelio Estevez.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Have you seen Repo Chick? Which I wasn't even aware of till I looked it up.
I watched the trailer. It's...
It has nearly... Aside from Harry Dean Stanton and Emilio Estevez, it has nearly the whole cast.
Miguel Sandoval, almost all in it.
Seems like
well, again, it's quite the vision. I think that's why it's the top of my list this time, because River's Edge, just full disclosure, I used to watch before school at that, and Heathers and The Crow were my three movies on repeat. But watching Repo Man this time, I was like, this is amazing. And this vision that he has, where he does, again, his like 50s sort of sci-fi nuclear stuff plus all the counterculture. I just thought the melding of it was like seamlessly, amazingly hilarious. And so I thought his vision was especially interesting.
Plus,
Joe, what's your face?
Oh, well,
Joe, what are you thinking?
I'd say generously giving black actors a chance to do something too in the 80s when they were
they're
not stereotypes at all in the 80s. When you look back, I mean, 80s was nothing but stereotypes, and it's just
Richardson,
looking at you, 48 hours.
What?
All of them, and I think
where to begin? Sure,
right, but
you've got a strong character in Vonetta McGee.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And again, there's his love for the old spaghetti westerns. I mean, she was in Europe in the late 60s.
She was in Shaft, though, right?
I don't know if she was.
Yeah,
but she was in one of the most.
She's in Shaft Goes to Africa.
She's awesome.
Maybe okay,
Okay.
She looks pretty. I haven't seen Shaft Goes to Africa, but I need to see it because she looks awesome. Just the stills, she looks awesome. And I'm like, because I was completely struck by her, going, "Wow, who's she?
No, she is something."
Right. No, she's super something.
Super,
definitely.
beyond. And Cy Richardson was always an Alex Cox regular, who plays Light, because I think he was a co-writer too.
Of what?
I don't know if he helped co-write, but I don't know. Unless Alex Cox saw him as one of his muses. I mean, he was in this. He was in Sid and Nancy. He's in Straight to Hell. He's also in Walker. He's in the first four, so there you go.
All right, Joe, you're thinking. What do you got? In
No,
terms of
I'm
vision, in terms of distinct vision, did you feel it from all three?
Having a distinct vision?
Yeah. This is not Star Trek Generations.
Even though there's a connection.
You brave man.
Yeah, I mean, I think... regardless of I don't know, I think each of the movies had their own very distinct, I don't know, flavor to them. And it was, I mean, I will say that probably out of the three of these, Robocop may also maybe strike some people I think is maybe the most generic in the sense of being like, okay, this is an action kind of popcorn type movie. But I think all of them did have something, an interesting angle to kind of present that was different from just, I don't know, any other movie that you might happen to flip through on TV and come across,
Absolutely. I mean, RoboCop, but it was a generic action movie, but when I first saw it in 87, I remember I was feeling kind of ill at ease when I left the theater. I just feel wrong. Almost like I'd seen porno or something. It just felt so, and it still gives me a sickly feeling. And Paul Verhoeven's films all do. Once you realize
it's an icky film.
That's that's the thing. So
but wouldn't you say one of his lesser icky films?
Yeah. Well,
when you look at his Dutch output.
Yeah.
Yikes.
No, when he was being clamped down by the studios, he's RoboCop, you look at it now like, well, all the things that still gross me out, and again, now the only version that's available is, I think, this disgusting, like, uncut where everybody's got to just, like,
blow up.
you know?
Yeah.
But that wasn't the cut in the theaters.
No.
So the cut in the theaters are much more tasteful, and I think it's not that I'm offended. I just think it's gloopy and not unnecessary, you know. So these, like, Murphy's death in the theaters was a shock, like a complete shock to me, the way he dies, because it was brutal. I hadn't seen anything that brutal at that point in my life. Then you look at the extended version, and it's just way too over the top.
Over the top, yeah.
You can feel the guy pumping the syrup out of his arm, you know.
Yeah.
And
the same with Kinney's death.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It just feels over the top, and you know, a lot of these makeup guys who work in makeup are like long-haired, roadie-looking guys who dude,
I got an idea.
Know? So you just feel that, you know, Otto. Talk about Otto.
Yeah, right.
You know? So it just seems like, okay, easy guys, easy. You know.
Okay, but I will say, watching RoboCop with these two other films makes it seem less conventional. It does make it seem like part of this era of sort
this
of
80s new wave of cinema. You know,
cinema.
Critical of the television set, critical of the generic place where we're going as people.
Sure.
You know, and this lifeless.
Critical of consumerism in an interesting way, not in an obvious way.
Yeah.
Well, the other interesting thing about RoboCop, for those of us old enough to remember when, you know, the posters first came out, it was one of those, it was so audacious. You see a movie with a cyborg stepping out of the vehicle, and it says RoboCop. And so many people I knew, the first response was, who's going to go see a stupid movie called RoboCop? I mean, right there, you know, exactly. But for those of us a little older that were in the know, I saw Paul Verhoeven's name, and I said, oh, Paul Verhoeven, okay. This has got to be worth seeing. Especially after the debacle of his, what was it, Flesh and Blood with Rutger Hauer.
I was going to tell you, I had the school guidance counselor and Vale Union High School had the Flesh and Blood poster on her wall.
Yeah.
So I feel very, very happy going to you. But I had no idea. I just thought she liked Rutger Hauer or something. But I had no idea until I saw that travesty of just how strange that was that a guidance counselor had that film.
But this is what I remember about seeing the movie in the theaters. Every time, and I saw it, I think, 3 times that summer, 87. Every time, it was always audience participation. I mean, you talk about Rocky Horror Picture Show. People went to RoboCop to cheer it on. Every time. You know, certain scenes, I mean, the way they would just hit it, and people would, and especially the ending, that great ending, you know, Dick, you're fired, and just the way the audience erupts. But I remember the moment, you know, from the opening shot, after the, you know, like the helicopter shot going into Detroit, when it opens with that faux news broadcast, this was something different. You know, and it was, you know, I was like, okay, this might be worthwhile.
You know what intrigued? I saw the poster. I was one of those scoffers. I saw the poster, all machine or part machine, part man, all cop, and all that. And I was like, stupid, you know.
Yeah,
but then I remember seeing it on Entertainment Tonight. Who Lisa Gibbons, the newscaster,
who's in it? Yeah,
the newscaster in the film was also a host or whatever on Entertainment Tonight. And they did a little segment with it, and the stay out of trouble, that made me go, oh, I want to see that. That looks pretty good. You know, it had an edge. It didn't look like The Running Man or some just cheese fest. It looked like it had something to it. And so I went opening night. My brother.
Well, isn't RoboCop in the name itself sort of satire? I mean, all of that.
I think so because
that's what I thought. Seems a little punk in its satire of like RoboCop.
And I think studios were sort of like, well, that movie, you know, the title is a little dumb. But I think it was, no, that's the point. Stick with RoboCop. Good point. No,
it sounds like a product. That's what's hilarious about it.
Yeah. and so then you see the movie and it ties in. Everything just ties in.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, as as Dutch and gloopy as it is, I do think the satire in it is a little bit gorgeous because of, because it is a little bit more conventional. So the satire comes across more in some ways.
Well, it is interesting that both Repo Man and
RoboCop.
RoboCop are made by foreigners.
Right.
Sure.
Looking, with their take on America.
Yeah.
Well, remember when Johnny Rotten
But a lot of times that can go wrong. A lot of times.
Okay,
there are
but
plenty
talking-
I'm just saying this, but I'm just saying
fine.
it's interesting that those guys, for what I'm just theorizing why Alex Cox and Paul Verhoeven got it right, when a lot of times, foreign directors come into a country or into the U.S. and they suck at it because they just don't get it. And
well, think about our old pals, John Hillcoat and Nicholas Roeg.
Sure.
They seem, they seem to understand apocalypse and the world changing. And
sure, but then for every John Hillcoat, there's what's his face from Alien Resurrection, or there's other people who come into the scene and don't get it at all.
Okay, but back to Johnny Rotten really
Yeah.
fast. Him talking about the 70s, England, when they were experiencing punk and God Save the Queen and all of this, the United States had no idea yet. And then by the time I think Alex Cox is making Repo Man, they're starting to understand. And I think Alex Cox, with his sort of punk roots, is understanding that in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I'd agree. Roseanne, I don't remember. When did you first see Repo Man? I saw it with our brother, who said,
I didn't see it with you guys at all. I saw
you
it.
got to see this. It's so funny. And I immediately liked the humor. And I don't know why. I think we'll get into it soon, but I just think Emelio Estevez's performance drew me in. So I was immediately in. I was immediately laughing at it all, and it all seemed silly to me or kind of ludicrous, but I remember just laughing at him being the straight man in all this lunacy, and that still holds up like more than ever. That wow, he really holds that film together.
For sure.
When all the great eccentrics surrounding him.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we get into it, do we want to just give Tim Hunter any more credit for his vision, or did we give enough?
I think if we're being fair, are there a ton of movies that are like River's Edge in existence? And so I have to give it to him for having like a fairly singular voice and vision for that film.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I know
that isn't even really copied very often, or
Isn't it? Haven't we seen it? I forget which films. I know I've seen other sort of knockoffs of it, or in that vein. But
what though?
It's escaping
Nothing comes
me at the
to
moment.
mind.
Yeah,
it'll come, but I don't know. I can't think of anything.
Again, like I said, I do think their obsession with TV and that whole Mission Impossible scene does remind me of Tarantino and his Manson gang in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I was just like, yeah. Also, Repo Man and the Trunk and Pulp Fiction. I was like, Tarantino, I think, is watching these movies.
For sure. Yeah.
Which, as he should be. But I do think that for some reason, Keanu Reeves freaking out in the backseat to that Mission Impossible theme, as annoying as it is, has a certain level of truth that I think is interesting. Anyway, I've seen very few films like it. Successful.
This time I took it as a sort of cacophony to hide the fact that he is falling in love with Ione Skye, that he's that I thought that's what he was doing. He just doesn't know how to channel it, so he's being irritating.
No, his avoidance of emotions comes across in a Mission Impossible theme, which I think is hilarious, and that's kind of all of them.
Yeah. Well, shall we launch into performance since we're nearly there?
Why not?
All right. So, going around the room. And so we have, in the first movie, we've got Emelio Estevez. Again, Crispin Glover's billed as the lead. He's not the lead. It's Keanu Reeves, for sure. I mean, the movie's just like Harry Dean Stanton's the bigger star. He gets the top billing, but it's Emelio Estevez all the way. And then you got, of course, Peter Weller. So, who did the best job? Joe Field. I'm gonna go pick on you. And,
Okay.
and with the caveat, I know, it's like choosing your favorite child.
I actually kind of I like Keanu Reeves' performance. I think the best actually. Um, I think that he did a good job of being kind of a teenager who's, got kind of, he's kind of a little bit messed up. He's got some problems, but his heart's in the right place. He's trying to protect his younger sister, kind of forced into a parentalized sort of role. Because his mom doesn't seem to know how to parent and isn't getting a lot of support from her, boyfriend. And I think that he has a really good, I think, pretty nuanced performance that, I don't know, I think stands out to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm going to second
Yeah.
that emotion. I think it's one of those things where Keanu burst on the scene fantastic, and then we all judged him for playing Bill and Ted. And then, of course, he did Dracula, and Much Ado About Nothing, where he just flat out probably got nervous. He got nervous, couldn't do it, but he choked up. He choked, I think, and it's interesting because he does give such an honest performance. So he was always capable of it, but somewhere in his career, somebody made fun of him or something, because then he did kind of start doing this, and it was like we traveled on the train to Budapest, and it just had this feel of like, okay, what do you just be honest? You're not hitting the mark when he did. I'm always surprised in both River's Edge and then Point Break. Like, man, he really holds a movie, and he's a movie star. It's not just for nothing. It's like, oh, it's because he's good looking or something, or he knows kung fu. He's a good actor, and when the role is right, he can really hold a movie, and he's a star for a reason. And that movie,
he has such an emotional honesty. It's
Yeah.
really, he really is so effective in that movie.
That movie reminded me, like, yeah, no, he has the goods. He just sometimes he swings and misses, but he tries. God love him. He tries when Dangerous Liaisons and all that, where you're going, wait, what? Why is he in this? But okay, so he's not, that voice gets him. But anyway, Alex, thoughts?
It's a toughie. I think I have to give the nod. It's hard because there are three different performances. I have to give it to Emelio Estevez because he was so good in that movie.
Yeah.
And after that, it's like, what happened? And it didn't take long. It wasn't, the fall wasn't long.
I was bemoaning this off camera to Roseanne that he lost his edge, but I was looking at a photo of him recently. He looks like he has his edge back.
I told you that, right? I feel like he seems crazy again.
He doesn't act, he's behind the camera, which is fine, but he came on, he burst on the scene with such promise. There was I remember a TV movie he did with his father just a couple of years before Repo Man. In the Company of Strangers, where he plays a young teenage rebel who gets pulled over for drunk driving, and his dad decides, well, he's got to learn a lesson, so put him in jail. And of course, it snowballs. But
based on An Evening in the Sheen House.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say lately he looks like he's been arm wrestling with Charlie a lot. Charlie's infection has gotten into his eyes. He's got those crazy Sheen eyes back.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but he was so spot on in this movie. There wasn't an ounce of dishonesty in his performance.
Yeah.
And he really got that character.
Truly, yeah.
He breezes through it, doing a lot of work with like every actor should, without exhibiting too much. He doesn't throw too much into it, but he gives it the right amount where you just buy him 100%.
Yeah,
I buy that he wants a repo wife.
Yeah, even the little things. That great scene when he comes home.
Oh my God, I love that scene.
Because I love you.
Mom.
I love you, Mom.
Yep.
You too, Dad. It's good. Whatever. Oh God, no! But the way he tries to charm him, we know people like that.
My favorite scene is just how he reacts to Harry Dean Stanton. I love his scenes together.
They were great together, and I love the scenes with Kevin.
Him buying the code of the Repo Man. He sells it more than Harry Dean Stanton.
He does. But and everyone, the way he relates to every different person in that movie, it's just a little different. The way he relates to
the light.
The light, but it's oh God, I can't think of her name. The girl, the one that he meets,
Debbie, right?
Debbie,
punk.
yeah, Debbie.
Yeah,
no, not Debbie the punk.
No, the girl.
The girl.
They do it in the car or whatever.
Yeah, the one who's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a great dynamic, and again, like you say, he doesn't sell it. He's believable in those.
Well, that scene even
he doesn't oversell it. Right, he doesn't oversell it.
When Tracey Walter is even like preaching his well, the more you drive, the less intelligent you are. I love that. Emilio Estevez is just handing him sombreros and shit to burn and
a copy of Diuretics.
Right.
Don't you love the scene where they throw the gift box out the window and it's all that cash
full of money?
Sums up our existence in a nutshell.
Entirely.
But even the great scene when he finally hooks up with Parnell in the Malibu, and Fox Harris. For the small part that he has, he's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's in the trunk?
So are we diminishing Peter Weller's contribution?
No,
in fact,
because
I want to say, if you were
I do
asking
not
me,
want to.
Okay.
I'm asking you, Roseanne.
All right.
Do not
I thought you were going to say Emilio Estevez, though. I thought we had. I kind of had second thoughts upon rewatching River's Edge, so I'm like, I gotta go. My heart says Keanu.
Keanu's amazing, but Raphael and I have been talking about this nonstop. I'm like, Peter Weller is such an interest. I mean, he brings so much to Robocop. Even just, it's such a physical, interesting, strange performance that I actually love to watch him. Yeah. So I'm Team Peter Weller on this.
Well, no,
okay.
That's why it's a hard.
I think it's such a cool.
That's why it's a hard one.
I think it's a cool performance.
I
love all these performances, but in terms of physically what he's doing and just his
what he had to go through to do it.
Sure. Okay. Is it? I mean, I just think, and you buy the fact he doesn't become sentimental. You buy that there's just these shreds of confusion and humanity running through him, and I think that's a genuinely interesting performance. And his shoulders tell that story, and I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, even he
does
mouth.
good acting in that suit.
In the mouth.
Yeah, he really does.
Yeah. But and credit to him for coming up with those great movements. That is really a lot of it.
Is that all Weller?
It's pretty much if you read up, because they wanted him to move in a much more fluid manner. But when it takes 10 to 15 hours to put that damn suit on,
sure,
and it overheats, and they have to put fans inside because he's losing 5 pounds every day he does the scene.
Yeah.
And they realized it wasn't working, and I guess there was this big spat on the set, so he goes off with his movement coach, and they come up with those great staccato moments, those movements, which is very right out of Peking opera, I think.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Raphael and I rewound them. I was like, this is really cool just to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and just has that Batman look, that Batman under the cowl look, where his mouth looks cool, like Michael Keaton, he's just there. And we won't get too far into this, but when you see RoboCop 3, he's not in it, and you feel his law, what's this, Robert Burke, whoever played him, he's just, it's just not the same. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like it's a role that you could easily be take it for granted that it could be anybody. But it's really Peter Weller's role.
For sure.
No.
For sure. Yeah.
He has that in such an interesting, that alien-like face.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure that helps.
And yet, sort of the cool, dispassionate rock star of Buckaroo Banzai is gone. And he just you still buy that he'd be this wide-eyed, sort of man of the law trying to impress everybody, and you just he carries that off really well, and it's very subtle too, because there is a similarity between him and Emilio Estevez and
Keanu.
They have this sort of aimless trust, or not trust, but disillusionment. Well, I guess let's talk about that just for a second. Just getting back into thematics, he trusts the system, but it lets him down, whereas the other two don't give a crap. So is that the only difference in the films? Is that he's sort of...
Well, we're meeting him at a different time in his trajectory that eventually gets kind of to the same place. Right. I feel like.
Well, he finds himself more than the other two do.
In a way. Sure. In a way. But remember, the only way that he overcomes the bad guy is the old man saying, "Dick, you're fired." I mean, if you know, and again, one of the best twist endings I've seen in a long time, if ever. You know, and you see the directive, you just see that, thank you. And you knew
I like the thank you.
Thank you. And we were talking, you know, how that movie ends, the way it just ends like it should. Nice shooting, son. What's your name? Murphy.
Well, I feel like that's almost this old-fashioned way of, like, he does find himself.
It's like an old Western. It is. It's like, you know, Shane has just vanquish the bad guys, or John Wayne found, you know, what's her name, Natalie Wood, you know, and
he asserts his like personhood by he knows his own name.
Yeah.
You know, which I think is, you know, his search. But I also feel that when Emilio Estevez gets in the car and goes to outer space,
this is intense.
Like, this is intense.
Well, even though he breaks up with Layla.
Yeah.
What about our relationship? Oh, fuck that.
Right.
I'm sorry, but that line is so... Again, awesome. These three movies...
It would be heartless from any other actor.
Yeah, but these three movies, just smart writing, you know, and great performances. Really. No exposition.
Yeah.
None of that, you know? I mean, we go right into Robocop. Boom. I mean, it's set up.
Yeah.
We don't need the backstory. We don't need any of that needless exposition.
And it's all there. It's all there in the memories.
It's there in the memories.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. The memories for sure, which it could have been really stupid. But I just think the fact that these three performances are three unbelievably terrific performances, as hard as they are to compare, I feel like that says something right there.
Well, like you say, the way they own these performances, could you see somebody else in the role of Matt? In River's Edge, no. And who could play Otto?
Not where it would work.
Who could play Otto? You know.
Yeah. No, maybe Charlie.
No, not even Charlie.
But even he didn't have that same like the purity of that crazy fire in Emilio Estevez's hair and face.
Yeah.
I just think he's so live wire.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, let's go around for favorite supporting, and then we'll go into bit parts because there's a lot of bit parts.
Oh boy, are there ever? Yeah.
Supporting: Harry Dean Stanton, Nancy Allen, or I don't know. Let's see.
That's tough.
Yeah, Harry Dean Stanton, Nancy Allen, and I guess Crispin Glover or Ione Skye. I don't know. How do you want to split that one?
No, Tracy
What
Walter.
With that, that's a bit part. That's a bit part. That's
Tracy
a walk-up.
Walter.
Yeah, come on. Harry
so
Dean Stanton's the larger part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, is Dennis Hopper a bit part?
Kind of. He's and also starring. It's not. It's no. I mean,
you're not getting my man Miguel Ferrer.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of great performances across the board in all three movies.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, what's his face? Metzler, the teacher.
Yeah, sure.
You know. Anyway, so how does Nancy Allen never seems to come out of? She never seems to come out of the RoboCop movies with any sort of aplomb, or not with any sort of accolades or praise. And I wonder why that is, because she is very good.
She should for that first performance.
Has she ever been? I've never read one thing about, and the movie really works thanks to Nancy Allen.
It's probably because she was married to that scumbag De Palma.
You might have a point, which is unfortunate, because I think this is Nancy Allen coming into her own. I mean, we all knew her, but I mean, when she takes off the helmet with that page boy haircut, if you want to call it that, just kicks the crap out of that perp. This is different. It was like, okay, this is different than the Nancy Allen from Carrie or
Dressed to Kill.
Dressed to Kill. Yeah, no, this was, you know, I mean, there were a lot of nice little moments in that. in her performance. I think she deserves a lot more credit than she. I think they look back on it now. I mean, I've read some, analysis or some articles about it, and they do call her out.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah.
Never read
What
that.
a unique performance. I mean, it was. She's not like some.
She
damsel in
doesn't seem. She
distress.
does not seem like the typical female lead where she's given all the. They don't fall in love. There's not a lot of
They
BS.
don't fall
there.
in love, and she's not.
There's a
it's not
tender
really
friendship
labored with her.
There's a very good friendship between the two, which is another rare thing in movies.
Yeah.
And they definitely didn't capture it in the remake. Not that I even want to bring up that travesty, but
I was going to say,
yeah.
Stop.
But it's there's a lot of credit there. But yeah, we could. Joe, any thoughts? And then I guess Ione Skye. I mean, what are we talking about here? What are our categories here? Like, I get Crispin Clover. I mean, who gets second billing? And I guess Crispin Clover, Nancy Allen, and
Harry Dean Stanton.
Harry Dean Stanton. So who's your favorite there? Who walks away with the prize? And Nancy, I gotta go Harry Dean Stanton. I gotta throw it out there. Okay. So Joe, who do you got?
I think Harry Dean Stanton is probably up there for me. I think it was a funny but very intense and dedicated performance.
You get nothing but from the mighty Harry Dean Stanton.
I was gonna say.
I mean, it was, but it wasn't overacted though.
No.
Yeah.
You got the sense that this is a guy who lives his life almost totally wired most of the time, and just I mean, and I found that to be really kind of a fun thing to play off of Emelio Estevez's kind of. I don't know,
aloofness,
disaffectedness, not really wanting to be a part of any of this is then you got this other guy who's hey, anybody else did that?
Yeah. He's
all
in.
Kick his ass. It's okay, no, he's all there. So I thought that his performance was at least the most kind of fun to play off of the lead.
I'd agree with that. Alex, thoughts?
Harry Dean Stanton. And I think what's great is this performance he's just one film shy from becoming a leading man, which he does, because he did Paris, Texas right after this. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, with Robbie Mueller again, who did the camera work for both movies. So you do see, when you look at those shots of the desert at the beginning of the movie of Repo Man, you do see that at the beginning of Paris, Texas. And again, a foreigner's view of America. But no, it was just so fun to see Harry Dean Stanton. It wasn't necessarily a lead role, but he's taking the reins, and he had a lot, a lot to shoulder in that performance. And it's a standout performance.
Well, no one makes driving a car into other people's cars seem like that much fun, I have to say. Going on that journey with Harry Dean Stanton is kind of amazing.
I'm going to be right here going 110 per.
Right.
Are you agreeing with everybody, Roseanne, or is there?
I'm not.
That's okay.
And I love Harry Dean Stanton, but again, I don't know if this is a valid criticism or not, or opinion. But Harry Dean Stanton, to me, is remarkable in a lot of things. I could say Harry Dean Stanton's part in The Rose is amazing. It doesn't matter. Whereas Nancy Allen, I don't think. I love her and Out of Sight. But she was a performance. The first few times. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. The first few times I saw RoboCop, I didn't really care because but watching it. Where I'm actually paying attention for sure. I just think it's an interesting performance. And she could also be selling it as trying to be tough and, Linda Hamilton-ish or anything like that. And what she actually seems like is a cop and a human.
Yeah.
And I don't actually see that many performances like hers in that genre, full stop.
Yeah, I certainly took her for granted myself, like all the critics of the day. And just this last time realized I never gave any credit for her nice rounding out of the movie. Her humanity and her there's a decent friendship.
And she's a believable cop. I mean, she's tough.
She is.
She's resourceful, but she's vulnerable. Even her moments when she gets...
she's hiding from those guys. Yeah. I mean, which I think is valid. Yeah.
When she comes upon Joe Cox, the character, mind if I zip up? That little moment where she looks down and, a rookie mistake. But still,
he's great.
They're all great, yeah.
Well, sure, they're all great. Those guys.
All great.
I mean,
my God.
We could just say
well,
henchmen.
let's
hold on. I do think what she brings to Peter Weller is what Harry Dean Stanton brings to Emelio Estevez.
Okay.
I think also, just maybe this is less of an acting thing, but I could imagine looking at her character arc and kind of... I feel like it's understated. Like they don't really make a big deal of what she's actually going through in the movie. Like the first time that we see her, it's like, okay, she immediately established as a badass, and then the next major fight scene she's in goes up against one guy who gets her to look at his dick, and immediately is sidelined.
Yeah.
While the hero goes after all the other bad guys and then proceeds to be killed, essentially. But for her, it's like there is an element of okay, yeah, I wasn't able to... I made the call that we should go in there. And that's sort of what ends up getting him killed. And she ends up being instrumental in bringing him back to himself. He died kind of on his own, and she's the one who's kind of bringing him and saying, hey, remember who you are. You're not you're not a product, you're a person.
Yeah.
That's good.
And eventually kind of having her redemption arc of being able to kill the guy that's, shooting or drops all the junk onto Peter Weller. So
yeah.
But again, I don't think it's something that's we're really hit over the head with it as an audience. So I feel like I can understand why people would ignore it. Is if you're looking at all the cool, awesome action and stuff, that's gonna go totally unrecognized unless you're really looking at it and going, oh, that's actually kind of cool that she has this arc of sort of redemption that's not really talked about a whole lot.
Yeah,
which is too bad.
And I think that's interesting. Yeah. She fucks up at her job, which they usually when they have women in those roles, they have to be these tough badasses who do everything right. The fact that she is she's a partner, she's a cop, she messes up, and you're right. And I like that. I think that's 100% right.
But there's no scene where I felt so guilty when you died.
No, but you get that. She does have that moment, but it's done so wonderfully well when she comes upon the body. After they leave, and she has that moment of vulnerability. And I really didn't notice it all the times I've seen it before, but this time around, it's like there it was. So almost, when they're watching him shoot at the range.
Right.
And they're all just marveling, and then she's the only one that spots.
Laser.
Almost as if she's just, it's got to be him, There's got to be this. Oh, please, Lord, please.
It's not that face that looks definitely like Peter Weller.
Exactly like Peter Weller. Yeah.
Well, but again, we don't know. I
know. I'm sorry.
At least he wasn't doing a voice like this.
Yeah, no, he.
I'm the Dark Knight.
Another reason he's great. No dumb voice.
Yeah. So who, just real before we move on to the next round of actors, who compliments Keanu? Who's his sidekick? Is it Ione Skye or is it Crispin Clover? Who do we? Because that's a tough one. That is such an ensemble piece that there is no pairing like the other two movies.
There is none.
I do feel that, and I love Ione Skye in that movie. She's really natural and great. But I do feel like Crispin Glover's, I think he's a good counterpart for Keanu.
Yeah.
I think he does push, they push against each other in a really compelling way.
Yeah. I agree. I said this off camera. I'll say it for the first time on camera. I felt put off this time watching it because when I first saw River's Edge, I was just shocked at how cold-hearted it seemed to me. I was a naive young 18-year-old, and this movie just seemed harsh. So then years later, I knew it was good. I appreciated it, but I always felt it was almost cynical, which is why I thought we should pair these films together. Then this time watching it, I felt, whoa, it's a lot more emotional and on the nose than I remember. And having worked with the mighty Crispin Glover and seeing his process, I felt like in this film he was sort of relying on Crispin Glover isms, if I may. So that's all. So I was just sort of, yeah, he does that finger pointing a lot. So anyway, I just thought it wasn't as great as I remembered. But then I watched it again and I settled in because I was, sometimes you watch a movie and you loved it or whatever, and then you see it again and you thought, oh, that wasn't exactly how I remembered it. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is whatever happened to Baby Jane, and you saw it and freaked out when you're 8 years old, and then you see it when you're 30, and it's exactly as you remember. River's Edge wasn't that. It changed to me like this from the last. I hadn't seen it maybe 20 years. So I thought it was different, and Crispin Glover jumped out as he's giving a performance.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I don't think so, but I don't think it hurts the movie.
No,
I don't think so.
I think.
In fact, I think it enhances the character in a way of just oh, what a poserish teenage fool.
Because he is exactly.
Yeah.
When you really pay attention and the way they talk about him, and the way he's treated by others. I mean, even Feck. Are you my friend? Even though checks in the mail. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Just eyeballing him. But it's.
Also, Ione Skye calling out what a fraud he is.
Yeah.
That he's all tough, but he's shy and goofy with girls.
Don't you think he's laying it on a little thick with, I poked you with this stick? Doesn't it feel a little bit like a performance?
It's possible.
But honey...
Again, I'm not saying it's not, but you asked the question, who does that for Keanu? And he does.
No,
whether it's over the top or not, which I think it is, it's still effective in terms of the ensemble.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about bad guys. So I guess it's Dick Jones, and then on a subcategory, Miguel Ferrer versus Dennis Hopper or John or Samson or I guess the doctor, whatever his name is. The government, right? So it's the government.
The government's the bad guy.
Yeah, the government's the bad.
That woman with her hand.
Yeah, the steel hand.
hand.
Can I kiss her?
Enchanté.
All right, best bad guys. Best team
where's
of
Kurtwood
bad guys.
Smith? Does he not?
Oh, right. Well, Kurtwood. Okay, he's part of the. I guess he's part of the trio of RoboCop bad guys.
Of the trio.
Plus his dumb gang, which are all great.
Yeah.
Including the ever smiley Ray Wise.
And again, I think what's so amazing about Clarence Bodiger at that time from any other, he was not your typical bad guy.
He had glasses and a bald head.
And you know why? You know why Verhoeven's cast him?
No,
because
why?
Verhoeven's Verhoeven's, as many of us know, he saw Heinrich Himmler. He saw Heinrich Himmler.
Oh, I thought he saw Staying Alive.
No, I never saw that movie, thank God. No, he
Hilarious.
saw, because Verhoeven's did grow up in the Holocaust. I mean,
Right.
that's, it figures into a lot of his movies.
Sure.
And he said he was always fascinated that this balding little nebbish man with glasses could be so vile. And he's there not because he has muscle, not because he's strong, but because he's smart and he's resourceful. And he just has that sheer audacity, which
Bitches leave. Great line.
Yes.
Yep. Directed to the point.
Right to the
point.
Whatever he's paying you, I'll double.
I always took his scene with Dick Jones for granted, and this time I was just laughing. Like,
no, it is one of the best.
Dick,
Richard. Well, it looks like we'll be working after all, Richard.
Yeah. Well, Ronny, I gotta just say, hands down for me, it's Ronny Cox. No matter what.
He is.
Over Dennis Hopper, over Daniel Roebuck, who is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I just love Ronny Cox.
And I think it's the first time we've seen Ronny Cox in a role like that. He was always this sympathetic character.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember him playing a villain before that. I mean, we've got Deliverance, of course, where he's the tragic friend.
Tragic,
right.
yeah.
Yes, we've got Beverly Hills Cop, where he's the sympathetic,
Bogomil, yeah.
Bogomil, great performance. But this, It was different.
Well, I think he takes the Beverly Hills Cop template and then turns it into this corporate,
inverts it, and
so
it's
the
wonderful.
by the books jerk, sort of the by the books, avuncular, sort of sage, wise,
But even the first time we see him in that interview,
that's on the side of evil.
Yeah. Even the first time we see him in the interview, every cop knows the score. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Yeah, no, but
I mean, pure business.
I think it's what you said off camera, Alex. It's the moment where Kinney gets shot. And Dick just goes, that's a, he just, the mood goes into just a glitch. And I think the first time I saw that, it just struck me that he could be so cold-hearted. I was such a naive youth.
Just a glitch.
What an evil man. What an evil man he is. He doesn't even care.
Well, off camera, you talk about his great, the moment when he's anticipating Robocop.
Yeah.
Oh, those are some serious charges, officer. You better take me in.
No, I don't know. To me, a bad guy is always defined by how much do you hate him, and I hate him. So I think that he wins the prize for me.
Even the fact that he kills Bobby Morton, you hate him. I mean, it's like, that's a bad guy. Well, yeah, he has Bobby Morton killed, but
you want to see Miguel Ferrer get it in some way, but
not like that.
Yeah,
I was shocked when I didn't think that he would die so soon. Yeah. Because he was a form, but and I guess you're like, well, how will he figure into this story? Because he is such even though, he is responsible for the creation of Robocop. I mean,
but don't you, in the confrontation in the bathroom, he's going to get it.
He's going to get something. I didn't know like that.
Yeah, but you're not going to mess with Ronny Cox. That's Ronny Cox's power. Like, there was always risk. You just crossed a line. I love that scene. It's such a great monologue. And I rarely give screenwriters credit, but Ed Neumayer's script for Robocop is really, really funny. And, and that whole I used to call the old man names, Iron Butt, Boner.
I even called him asshole.
Great monologue. Anyway,
let me just say
I'm monologuing
really fast.
myself. Sorry, go,
really
Roseanne.
Fast. I have to say Daniel Roebuck, I do hate in River's Edge. I do hate that his true. She was talking shit.
That's
and
true.
Just,
he just seems like such a small-time thug compared to Dick Jones.
Which I get it, but I like the fact, and I've been thinking about it a lot. Again, a villain shouldn't be searching for world domination and that kind of thing. A villain is someone, who is an absence of good, which is what he is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, and so I do think, as much as I love the trio you're talking about, obviously, and I'm a huge Miguel Ferrer. You're going to be a bad motherfucker, poked up energy kind of thing. But I do think Daniel Roebuck and Dennis Hopper are really effective and interesting. And I know you don't love Dennis Hopper's performance, but I think there's some really interesting moments from him.
Who doesn't love his performance?
Gino Caputi doesn't love his performance. I really like his performance.
I'm not critical of it. I for some reason I think he gets a little lost in that movie.
I don't think so.
I feel like
I really agree with Roseanne.
Okay, fine. I don't think he does a bad job at all. I just feel like does he bring the same gravitas as he does in Apocalypse Now? And the answer is no. I don't think.
No, but wait a second. I love that part, and I know I said this before. Right. He is this he's the king of impotence, and I do like the part when he's talking about he's almost relishing his former biker days when he lost his leg, when he tells that story. I really like that story. I think that's a good bit of acting there. Yeah, and I like that Daniel Roebuck doesn't give a shit. I love them together.
But Dennis Hopper is another one of those guys like Harry Dean Stanton. He could be a turkey, and he's still fun to watch.
No, for sure. Right. For sure.
Because he was a guy that always made it look easy. I hate the movie Blue
Velvet, but him saying, patch blue ribbon and freaking out is the best part of that whole thing.
Amongst other things. No, I love him in that movie. That
movie's exhausting. But anyway, I think I'm going to go with Daniel Roebuck and Dennis Hopper only because I think what they're saying is really valuable.
It is. I did not mean to diminish Dennis Hopper's abilities. It's just not one of my favorite. It's just not one of my favorite performances of his. I think he gets
okay.
a lot of times he's the center of attention. I think he gets outshined in that movie. That's all.
I kind of like that he does. I like
Well,
that he
maybe
does.
he's being
I
a
like
generous
that he's talking.
actor.
I think he is.
I feel like he is.
I think
Yeah.
he
I do,
is.
especially in that young cast.
But how do you outshine Harry Dean Stanton? You just can't.
I don't think you can, but I think Emilio Estevez burns as brightly in a different
Yeah,
way. His
for
intensity mixed with Harry Dean Stanton's like cool, awesome, self-contained, cowboy energy is great in that movie. But so anyway, I'm saying Dennis Hopper and Daniel Roebuck for me.
All right. Joe, any thoughts on this? U.S. government and Repo Man to mix it up?
Amazing stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know it's hard because hearing all this discussion, I'm like, man, I need to do more thinking about these movies. But I think it's hard to choose one set of villains over another because they're meant to fulfill such different roles within the movies. I think that,
as Roseanne said, they are coming from a place of just lack of good, not evil, but just a distinct lack of good.
Yeah.
Like the automatons bulldozing bodies in Auschwitz. They are coming from that place where that is true evil versus I'm out to get you, Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I think that a lot of us, at least, I don't know how much of a fantasy it is to think that these people at the top of major corporations and stuff are, trying to figure out how best to make a buck and would do anything to get that extra $1. They buy it for $1.
Yeah,
but
nice.
Thank you. Yeah. But I think that there's something about the performance in River's Edge it's a much more personal kind of evil than in Robocop. Robocop, I feel like, is supposed to be kind of big and operatic. Like I immediately did see, like, I was like, wow, this reminds me a lot of Batman 1989. And it's like I feel like probably this might have had some inspiration there, in inspiring it potentially.
Yeah.
Because there is this sense of like opera to it, and gravitas. Even though it is making fun of some of these different ideas, that there's some real deep emotional depth that's present there too. And similarly, they have these big kind of, I don't want to say outlandish villains, but like they're bigger than normal life.
Yeah.
Because these are bigger than normal life problems. And have these guys been responsible for the deaths of other people? Totally. They've probably they have so much blood on their hands, but it's not very personal.
Right.
Whereas like with these teens, and I think that what's interesting is like I don't even think that Dennis Hopper is really much of a villain so much as like maybe almost an anti-hero of some kind,
right,
in a weird way.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, because he's like, yeah, I killed the love of my life, and like I did it out of love, like in a weird way. Whereas
and they don't say why, do they?
They never do.
Don't say why.
You never find out. Yeah.
I do feel like it has to do with the biker code somehow. And something.
Yeah.
But I know that sounds dumb, but I feel like it has to do with that. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
It could. But I kind of think that, like, him even talking about that and then gauging John's or Samson's, like, reasoning. And his reasoning is, like, I wanted to try it. I wanted to have a new experience. Like, and it was great. It was amazing. Like, and it's seeing his progression as a villain from, like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And, there's a bunch of other very uncomfortable questions that kind of come up with him as a villain. Not the least of which is the implication, like, okay, like, when we see flashbacks when he's strangling her, she's fully clothed.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's on the riverbank, she is not.
Yeah.
What happened there? There's something that's so, like, I can see these big corporate people and be like, okay, they're bad. Like, they're bad guys. I want to see them go down. But this guy, it's like a kind of, he kind of gives me that sort of disgusting pit of the stomach kind of twist of like, ooh, like this is something that's actually deeply unsettlingly wrong.
Well, Clarence, I agree with you, but in its medium, Clarence Bodiger is very disturbing. Ronny Cox, the fact that he's, the first time Peter Weller's hand got blown off, I was immediately disgusted. Yeah. It's still in your face. Yes, it's big. It's ballsy. It's in your face, but it's still a very disturbing movie. And that Ronny Cox, again, I'm not trying to say that you're wrong or Ronny Cox is the king, but they are different, but they are still come from the same sort of lack of love is apparent in both movies. One's on a much smaller level, and I agree on an intimate level. Daniel Roebuck is very disturbing, but I still think I don't know. My favorite, if we're analyzing, I still got to go with Ronny Cox. But you're right. I hate Daniel Roebuck too, for sure, and he does a great job, no doubt about it.
He does, and I think you're right, Joe, about Dennis Hopper being an anti-hero, because in a way he's trying to protect the world from the likes of Daniel Roebuck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this like loveless, just sort of experiential sort of existence that amounts to nothing. I mean, he is sort of this throwback in a way, this biker, but he's sort of trying to stop people from nihilism.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you're right. He's not quite a villain. Yeah.
Alex, did you get your say? Did I give you your say on who's the best villain?
Yeah, Alex, what is your say?
Did you?
I don't know if I asked you or not, so I can always edit it.
I think you did, but you could edit it, but yeah. Boy. Well, it's so funny because, you start off with your opinion, then you listen to everybody's opinions and discussions, and you're like, I never thought of it that way, and Daniel Roebuck does bring something different, which is unique, because he's really more like a force. I don't want to say he's a force of malevolence. It's just, he's like this ball of rage, this inarticulate rage. You could have quiet rage.
But I think that's why he dies, though, because there is no rage in him.
There's some. I don't know what it is.
Call me a dick. I did kick his ass. That kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
I don't think you have to have that loud screaming rage, but because there's that. I keep forgetting there's that one little scene, which gives us a window in Samson's life when he's at home, and was that his mother
grandma?
Or his grandma?
Is it his aunt?
His aunt or I think it's his aunt, something like that. Are you going to read tonight? No, not tonight. But you see, like, okay, this is the only semblance of normality this guy has in his life.
Right.
But the funny thing is none of these kids seem to have parents that we know of. I mean, it's like we don't know Keanu's father. We don't even know who Crispin Glover is attached to. All we know is that Tony's father likes to express himself with a shotgun. Hold on. It's just, but all the adults just seem so unreliable, with the exception, and again, as broken as he is, Dennis Hopper, the only one that seems to have, like, as you say, Roseanne, a code. Because even Jim Metzler, it's like, he's still riding on the high of the 60s. Yeah. It's like, oh, it was great, man. And when they talk about that, like, we stopped a war. And that telling moment after, then we just didn't know what to do, man. I mean, it was like, did you think of an end game to all this? I don't know, man. We didn't think we'd get this far. It's like a George Carlin routine.
Yeah.
And he goes like, they've all become executives now, and women are expected to get married, to become housewives. But I guess that's the difference between the Jim Metzlers and the Fecks of the world. At least Feck has some kind of code. And we can assume that code led to the death of his girlfriend.
Well, and that Dennis Hopper feels something, and even the teacher doesn't.
Yeah.
The teacher's like, I don't feel anything.
Even when he's talking to the police at the end of the movie, and you could see, and the thing with, the hand, I mean, that's a great little moment, just sort of that, and I don't want to talk anymore. I'm just really, really depressed right now. And when he has that line about, I just lost my best friend, and you're wondering, who is his best? Is it Ellie?
It's the doll.
That's the
doll.
thing. Yeah, I know. But even though it's sort of ambiguous, it's like, he can't be talking about Samson, can
No,
he? I mean,
don't
he
think
felt
so.
he felt something for Samson in turn. I think that sense of loss, like, wow,
Yeah.
I knew guys like this in my day, but they at least had a code,
Yeah.
man. This guy's
Right.
got nothing. Nothing.
Okay, all right, I give up. It's Daniel Roebuck. All right. Well, we're gonna have to wrap it up. We're at the end of our time. So let's Joe.
Really fast, great score of Robocop by Basil. What's his name?
Palladorus, absolutely.
Yes.
But I
And
love the soundtrack
I guess
of Repo Man.
Good
Of
Repo
course.
Man and River's Edge probably has some hits that you recognize that I don't. Except for Mission Possible. I know that one.
Doesn't somebody hum the Star Trek theme at some point?
All right. Recommendations. Obviously, we're 3. Joe, I'm going to pick on you since you were new to all this. Any film you wouldn't recommend in the bunch?
Not really. I mean, I think that I might just recommend them with some caution, depending. I mean, River's Edge is not for everyone, I think.
No.
But
well, I would say none of the films are for everyone, for sure.
I think it's less for everyone
Yeah.
than the other two.
For sure. For sure. Alex, anything?
I would recommend all 3. And sure, if I have to throw a little tag on, it's like, look, I mean, if you want to see 3 provocative movies with vision, give them a chance.
Of a time, though, right? Of a time.
Of a time.
Yeah.
Of a time, but they still hold their own, 30 years later.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's why you see them as cautionary tales. So yes, they're of a time, but yes, they've surpassed that.
They surpassed that.
No,
I
do.
Yeah, they
I
exist beyond their time. Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, but they have to be recommended. They must be. They must.
Right.
They must
Roseanne?
get the word out.
Anything to add to this?
No. Again, just because I'm kind of high on Repo Man right now, I'd say that would be the first one out of the chute. But absolutely, I would recommend all 3 all the time, except to our mom. Then I would recommend none of them.
No, I don't think any mother out there really wants to see
Can I
a
say
girl
something,
being poked
though?
with a stick. No.
The first
little
time I
much.
saw Repo Man, my mom was in the room.
How'd she feel?
Okay, so when you've got the scene between Bud and Ole, why don't you take some time off? And you effing this and effing that, and my mother's like, oh God, it's like listening to your brother. It's like, she hated
For the
that.
record, my mom didn't want to let me watch River's Edge, and good old Gino Caputi came in and said, "Oh, but it's a good movie." So she let me because
I don't remember that
So
at all.
thank
What
you.
was
Yeah.
when was that? What year was that?
when I was renting it. So it was the night. When did I start watching it? Like 95-ish, 6-ish,
Wow.
and she thought it was so dark and terrible. And you came in like a fabulous big brother and said, "It's really smart. Let her watch it."
Hold on. So you were 15?
I'm trying to think somewhere around there.
If it's
I know I was in-
95, where? What do you mean came in? I wasn't even around. It was 25.
No, you were on the phone. You were
Oh.
on the phone, and you were like, it's really good. Let her watch it."
Huh.
Oh, okay.
Well, I always thought it was really good. My only delusion or false memory was that it was a cold-hearted movie, and it really isn't. It's
No.
hard to take, but it's not cold-hearted at all. Of the 3, it's definitely got the
Sure.
most of a not the pulse, but the most emotion, and it's hard on its sleeve.
Yeah.
Anyway, so okay.
Anyway, I'm just talking about recommending in mothers. That's all.
Sure. I know.
Okay.
I'm just sort of trying to remember my mindset back then because I didn't realize I thought it was smart. I thought it was my first reaction was one of just sheer fear and aversion to what was happening.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
Yep.
Well, great discussion.
Okay.
Thanks everybody. Anybody have anything to pitch? Joe, want to pitch your books again?
Nope, but you can see him behind you, so look him up.
Alex, anything to pitch? Any photo books you're printing? Or any coffee table books we're gonna see from the great Alex Robertson?
I
Okay.
saw a great episode of The Three Stooges. I think everyone should see. That's my contribution. Okay,
I'm in.
I'm in.
All right, Roseanne, anything you want to add?
Curly.
Maybe read more Ursula Le Guin.
Okay. Ursula
Okay.
win. You heard it first. All right, everybody. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube, like every other
Like every good
mindless
person out
corporate
there.
addled stooge, corporation consumerist stooge, like me. All right, bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to Fabulous Film and Friends. Copyright 2024, a Bel Air Films production.